It is Packers game day. What is up, everybody? Welcome into the Pack-A-Day podcast here on YouTube. I'm Andy Herman, going to be going over my 3 keys to the game for Packers-Eagles today, as well as taking, just a quick look at some news and notes around the Packers, who they called up, things like that. And then, of course, I'll give my prediction at the end as well. So let's start with the news and notes from Saturday. First of all, probably the biggest news, Corey Linsley placed on IR. Probably not the most unexpected news, but certainly was, noteworthy on Saturday. He's going to go on IR. He's going to be out for at least 3 games. The initial prognosis was about 2 to 6 weeks, so I just don't think he was ever going to probably be back less than 3 weeks anyway. They were going to be extra cautious with him. And while this was kind of expected, it's still just such a bummer because I think people realized that Corey Linsley was having a really nice season, but man, he was playing just out of his mind awesome, and he's just been so solid and so consistent. And even going back this last game against the Bears, they were playing great in the first half with Linsley in there. He goes out with the injury. The offensive line still held up well, and you have to give Elton Jenkins and John Runyon Jr. and that entire offensive line credit for coming in and making the switches and making the adjustments that they needed to. But there was a decrease just in the overall play from when Corey Linsley was in to when he was out of the game, and they had to kind of make those adjustments. And when you are facing an Eagles team with Fletcher Cox and all those type of players, and just all the games throughout the rest of the season, not having Corey Linsley for however many games it is, at least 3, it's just really disappointing. And for Corey too, he's in a contract year. He's playing phenomenal. All he has to do is stay healthy. He's probably going to get a big contract. Hopefully this doesn't affect it too much. If he's only out 3-4 games, it's not going to be a big deal. But definitely a bummer for the Packers. Definitely a bummer for Corey Linsley. Hopefully he's able to make it back better than ever, gets that big contract next year, whether it be from the Packers or somewhere else in the NFL, because he certainly earned it and was just having a tremendous season. So here's hoping he bounces back quick and can be that dominant center for the Packers for the remainder of this season. A couple other news and notes. Ben Braden as well as Dominique Daphne were called up from the practice squad. Ben Braden, not a surprise in any way, shape, or form. He was the most likely offensive lineman to get called up from the practice squad. He was technically a COVID replacement, so he is going to be, he doesn't count one of the 2 times that they can pull him up. That's really the benefit of using him as a COVID replacement. He's a COVID replacement for A.J. Dillon, who is still out. It doesn't have to be, a running back for a running back or anything like that. So Braden ends up being the COVID replacement, which means, again, it's not one of his 2 designated, practice squad to regular roster moves. You kind of get some extra ones when you use him as COVID replacements. So that's Ben Braden in this game. And then Dominique Daphne gets his first call up, kind of that H-back, fullback, tight end type. We'll see if Green Bay's creative with him. Probably a special teams player in this game, but they don't really have, that true H-back. I know, Jay Sternberger's been used a little bit in that capacity, but they, with Josiah DeGuara out, with John Lovett out, they don't really have that type of player. So it'll be interesting to see if they have packages and personnel groupings with him in it, or if he's just a pure special teams player. He's a unique player. He's got a very unique skill set, and I'm interested to see, again, if they actually use him on offense. My guess is probably not, but because they don't really have a player exactly like him on the roster, you never quite know. And if Matt LaFleur, gets a weapon or 2, he's not going to be afraid to use it. So keep an eye out for Dominic Daphne, and we'll see if he has, any plays in the actual offense on Sunday. All right, so here are my 3 keys to today's game, as I do every single week. Number 1 on my list is going to be just simply do not let Carson Wentz get in any sort of rhythm. And I think the talk all week for Packers-Eagles, especially from the Packers side, but certainly from the Eagles side as well, and really it's been a National Football League talking point across national television and things like that, as well as just what's wrong with Carson Wentz. He's nowhere near the same as he was a few years ago. He's really struggling. You can tell just the simple things are not there. His footwork's gone. His mechanics are gone. He's not seeing the field right. It's just everything basically needs to be stripped down and kind of built back up. And just the worst thing that you can do in that situation is let him get in any sort of rhythm. He is struggling immensely right now. And this is definitely not going to be something where all of a sudden this game against the Packers, his mechanics come back and he's throwing in rhythm and all those sorts of things. But you don't want to give him those easy throws. You don't want to give him those layups where all of a sudden, it's like a struggling 3-point shooter where, he's not making anything. All of a sudden he gets a layup, maybe a couple free throws, and all of a sudden, he's, drilling it from deep because he got a little bit of confidence. Make sure that Carson Wentz doesn't get that level of confidence in that game. I think that is a huge first step. And I know, again, it's interesting. And I can't believe I'm saying this about Carson Wentz after the way he played a few years ago. But I asked Ben Fennell for Friday's show on the Pack-A-Day podcast, do the Packers basically just play this game like they just played against Mitch Trubisky? That's where Carson Wentz is at right now to a full extent, which is, again, just crazy to say. But you don't want to let him get some of those easy throws. So, again, it's kind of a double-edged sword. You don't want to allow some of those big plays, and that's really what the Packers have been about. But at the same token, you really want to make Carson Wentz work, because if you're making him work, at least this season and really going back to last season as well, he hasn't been able to make those things happen on his own. So you watch for him to play a little bit of superhero ball and try to do some things on his own. And if you can make him get off platform and get outside of the pocket and just feel pressure, you're not going to get him in a rhythm, and I think that could be a huge key to this game is just making sure Carson Wentz stays like the 2020 Carson Wentz has played so far. Number 2, again, always kind of my easy one, but Green Bay has to be more stout against the run. First of all, more stout than they were a season ago against Philly. Philly ran all over them a season ago. And then just more stout in general than they have been this season as well. We all know that stopping the run has not been priority 1A for Mike Pettin in the defense, and it's certainly been an Achilles heel for them at times as well. You can't let the Eagles run it down your throat. You have to make Carson Wentz beat you in this game. They just don't have the weapons. They just don't have the playmaking, and Carson Wentz is 10 degrees off of where he should be. Don't let, Miles Sanders and Jordan Howard and Boston Scott and that entire running back group be the grouping that beats you in this game. Make it be Carson Wentz. And I can tell you right now that with all this stuff that's going on with Carson Wentz and Doug Peterson and this offense being broken, you saw some moves this week. Zach Ertz back from injury and Jordan Howard pulled up from the practice squad. Those moves in and of themselves, not really noteworthy, right? Jordan Howard is a shell of his former self. Zach Ertz is a shell of his former self. And that's, again, a part of the reason why you're seeing this Eagles team struggle as much as they have. But the logical conclusion that you can make here with a struggling Carson Wentz is that this is a team that's going to go more 2 tight end sets, maybe more power running. It's really what they have to do because they can't throw the football with any sort of regularity or consistency right now. And it also matches up that it's the Packers' biggest weakness. So Philadelphia's going to want to come out with big sets, big packages, and really run the ball down the Packers' throat, which has been an issue for them and was an issue in the Packers-Eagles game just last season. So you got to control the running game. You cannot let Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, Jordan Howard, who's ever in there, get going, and you've got to make sure that you dictate this game. Hopefully the Packers' offense is helping with that, getting big leads like they have early in this season, making Carson Wentz throw the football. That's a true legitimate key to success in this game, and if you can do that, your odds of winning are just exponentially high. And then number 3, I just really want to keep an eye on this Packers offensive line versus the Eagles defensive line. And we talked about already Corey Linsley being out for this game. The Packers have, still 5 solid starters, and they still have Rick Wagner coming off the bench, assuming that they go with the lineup that they, have been using recently with David Bakhtiari, John Runyon Jr., Elton Jenkins, Billy Turner, and then Billy Turner at right tackle, Lucas Patrick at right guard. So assuming they stick with that, and you still have Rick Wagner on the bench, you still have some depth there. So I like this Packers offensive line, but everything's just kind of a step down, right? So, John Runyon Jr. is certainly not as good as Elton Jenkins is at that spot. And, Elton Jenkins, while he's playing really well, is not as good at Corey Linsley at center right now. So you've got a couple of those spots that are just a degree down. If you go back and watch David Bakhtiari over the course of just really his career as a whole, phenomenal left tackle. The one thing he struggles with from time to time is power rush, and Philly has that in spades. They've got Brandon Graham, they've got Derek Barnett, they've got Josh Sweat. Those guys can bring power, get under your pads. It's not exactly an Achilles heel or a major weakness for David Bakhtiari, but it's what he struggles with the most. So they have, something that can bother David Bakhtiari a bit. Billy Turner's been a little bit up and down recently. And again, when you've got ends like that and edge rushers like that, they could give Billy Turner some problems. And then their interior is really stout as well. And when you've got Fletcher Cox, who's now going to play in this game, in the interior of that defense, Malik Jackson, they just have a lot of really talented players on their front. This is not the game that you ideally want to be without Corey Linsley. So really going to be keeping an eye on that matchup as well. One bonus one, just don't do some of the boneheaded stuff. Don't have the crazy special teams plays. And I know, again, that's probably some low-hanging fruit as well, but this is a team that you should beat. You're playing at home. They're not very good. They're struggling in a lot of phases. And I just think if you don't make the boneheaded plays and you just don't allow, whether it's missed field goals, whether it's blocked punts, whether it's kick returns for touchdowns, just don't allow those sort of things, and you should be in a really good position in this game. Final thought, I think Green Bay wins this game. I think they win it by about 8 points. I'm really excited for this game. I'm excited for the slate of football. Should be a really interesting day. I'm excited to see, Saints-Falcons, some of those matchups that I discussed yesterday. I also think, Titans-Browns should be a good game. So it's not the most epic slate of games ever, and, it's not a great Sunday night game. And if Packers-Eagles, let's be fair, is the big 3:30, game, 3:25 game, it's probably not that great of a slate of games, but, it still allows us to watch some of those good games early, and then keep an eye on Packers and Eagles at that 3:25 slot. So I'm excited for the day. I hope you guys enjoy your slate of games and enjoy your Packers football. I know I certainly will be. Make sure to check out today's Pack-A-Day podcast. Gage and Tyler will be breaking down the game for you. And then tomorrow, Alex Strofe and I will be breaking down the aftermath of the game as well. I'll be right back here tomorrow on YouTube. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.